Hi, my name is Cory Skuldt. I'm a sustainability strategy consultant working in the fashion industry. Welcome to ACC's Fashion Hour.
Hello and welcome to Fashion Hour at the Austin Community College Fashion Incubator. We're really happy to have you. My name is Nina Means. I'm the director here at the Austin Community College Fashion Incubator. We're a brand new program. We'll be launching officially on April 30th on Tuesday at 10 a.m. We'll have a grand opening celebration. We'll be giving tours and showing you all of the great new equipment that we have here. One of our things is that we always want to talk about how we started briefly, is that we are here because the city of Austin created an opportunity with the Austin Community College to create an opportunity for us to build local industry here in Austin. So they really saw fashion as a growth area here, and so it was an opportunity for them to collaborate with a high technology partner, Gerber Technology, to be able to present a new solution for how we do business in fashion. So we really wanted to leverage the technology component of what Austin does so well, but we really wanted to say how we could actually bring that together with the fashion industry. So I wanted to get a chance to just tell you briefly about our space. We do have some equipment here that has sharps, so please observe any signage around those machines just for your personal safety. We also wanted to let you know that we do have, this is an active student space, and so you may see students actually actively learning and working on projects here. So, be considerate of our students as well. I wanted to just briefly also let you know that we are on Instagram. And so if you want to follow us, our Instagram handle is ACC Fashion Incubator. And today we are doing where we'll actually tag you. If you're tagging us, we'll feature you in our Instagram stories. So if you go ahead and take a photograph, or you are doing a short run video, tag us and we'll actually put you on our Instagram story today. We also wanted to let you know that you can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn at the same handle. So it's all the same handle for you to find us there. I do want to talk about our topic. We have a really exciting topic today. It's on sustainability. And sustainability is something that we're really seeing in fashion is really coming front and center as something that has to be addressed now. We've really seen so many unfortunate circumstances that we'll talk a little bit about later with how our clothes are currently being made. But I think we have a lot of opportunities here to do business differently. And so we really want to push the envelope in this conversation about sustainability with our guest that I'm happy to introduce. We have two experts here on sustainability in our local Austin industry. The first is Cory Skuldt. She is a local strategist when it comes to consulting and supporting apparel brands and supply chain partners in developing a comprehensive and brand-aligned approach on sustainability. She does projects to include triple bottom line impact modeling, sustainability growth strategy, circular business model innovation, and so much more. She's worked with a variety of companies and NGOs, including Eileen Fisher, Patagonia, Outer Known, Ultra Fabrics, and Textile Exchange. Cory received her MBA in sustainability at Bard, where she continues to serve as a teaching assistant in data analytics and as the network's events chair for the MBA Alumni Board. So Cory also has a BFA from the Massachusetts College of Art and Design, and she's now based here in Austin. So we're really lucky to have you. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Nina. Glad to be here.
We also have Michelle French. Michelle French is the production coordinator here at the Austin Community College Fashion Incubator. She has come to us. She's a UT grad, and so hook 'em horns, right? For you. We are river bats here. But we're happy to play in the sandbox with all of our educational partners. We're really happy to have her. She's got a really great background in global supply chain management. She's completely understands the logistics that are required to help us to be more sustainable in the way that we build our programming. She's managed sample rooms. She's worked with as a senior designer and for manufacturers as well. And so she's really kind of covering both the design as well as the manufacturing side, and it really helps us. And as we're building our programming here to be able to support that growth. So I'll let her speak more on that later. So as we're getting started here, I pulled a few, this was actually from Cory's generous content that she shared with us from an organization called Remake. They're really kind of showing us how the consumer connects with the product and what we can do as consumers to help drive sustainability. Oops. So Remake, the lives behind what we wear. 100 pairs of hands touch your jeans before they even get to a store. 2,720 liters of water were used to make your favorite tea. 75 million lives work to make our clothes. 80% of fashion industry workers are women. 1 in 7 garment workers in Bangalore experience sexual harassment. If we get to know her, we can change her life. What if the things we put on our bodies reflected our value system? So we'll just give that a second to sink in. So Cory, it's so nice to have you. I'd love for you to kind of tell us a little bit more. First of all, thank you for these slides. I think this really helps to paint and frame what we're going to be talking about today. But could you tell us a little about how you began in your career and just how did your interest in sustainability in the fashion industry get started?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had a sort of long and winding path, an unusual approach to this industry. You'd mentioned my background as an undergrad was in art and design, and I actually worked in textiles, but wasn't really connected to the fashion industry as a business at that point. I worked in environmental nonprofits for 10 years and in apparel resale. And when I went back to school for an MBA in sustainability, that's actually what kind of shifted to me working within the fashion industry. My first year in that program, I started a project with Eileen Fisher, working on a growth plan for their circular business model, and it felt like all of the pieces fell into place of everything that I had worked on around environment and social organizing, and my love of textiles and fashion design.
That's so awesome. I am really curious about, could you tell us a little bit more about how Eileen Fisher is doing this kind of circular economy and what does that actually mean?
Yeah, so they have been a real leader in experimenting and piloting new business models that are more circular economy ready. And so when I say circular economy, I think it's one of the sort of buzzwords that's going around fashion sustainability right now, but not something that's really well understood. And I always say that the shift to circular economy is sort of a myth. We're already in a closed loop system. So when we think about our traditional economy of taking resources, making them into something new and throwing them away, that's sort of a fantasy. There's no outside that we take things in from. There's no away that we throw things away from. So we're already keeping all of the materials that we make and transform, and the question is, are we going to keep them cycling in a way that we can retain their value and continue to use them, or in a way that sort of destroys their value? So that was Eileen Fisher's kind of key question that they asked themselves. They are a brand that really has spent a lot of resources investing in their quality materials and building things for longevity, investing in the lives of their workers and the impact that their products make. And then they realized that once these products went back out into the world, they didn't really have any way to take responsibility for their full life cycle. So they began small with just an employee take-back program. And when my team came on board, they were in the process of transitioning that into a sort of part of the real business rather than this sort of side project. So they've now grown it to include a really well-developed resale model. It's very different than your sort of average thrift store experience. They're taking back clothing, inspecting every piece, professionally cleaning it, and reselling it if it's in perfect condition. That's their renew line. And then the pieces that are not perfect, some are going into feedstock for recycling into making new yarn, and if they're in between, that sort of could be still used as a textile but aren't in perfect condition as a garment, they're actually doing these incredibly beautiful designs, deconstructing and remanufacturing into new pieces. So really a complete model of kind of capturing the value at every stage of the life cycle. And there's a lot of companies now that are sort of starting to follow in their footsteps, but they've really invested in developing that model and experimenting with it.
That's awesome. That's great. I mean, I feel like she's really a leader, you know, and how, you know, businesses can kind of take charge of their inventory and really make it work for them. You know, I think that people have really responded to Eileen Fisher for that reason. I mean, she has a timeless aesthetic, you know, but on top of that, she's really looking at how she can make the world a better place, which I think people really resonate with.
Absolutely, and I would add that it's also worked well for their business. So they are a very mission, kind of purpose-driven business, but they're not a, you know, charitable organization. They're in the business of creating fashion and selling it, and part of that sort of taking back and recapturing value was realizing that there's a huge resale value of their clothing that someone else was capturing, and their brand wasn't really retaining the long-term value of what they invested in. So it's been a way for them to acquire new customers, capture a younger customer with a smaller price point, and it's been good for business as well as for the planet.
That's awesome. So, Michelle, you know, you've paid a great deal of attention to sustainability as a designer and also as a manufacturer. But what can other brands do to kind of look at how they can be more sustainable? How do they engage in this from your perspective?
Well, I think that one of the main things that hasn't worked for some of our companies are chasing the lowest, cheapest cost to make goods, like the lowest labor cost. I think that we've seen that our companies, like that is not a sustainable model. Right. So a really good example of that was in 2013 when an 8-story commercial building collapsed. It was a garment manufacturing facility. And we all looked to the company to figure out, why is this happening? What is going on? And I think that kind of led to a lot of changes. A lot of companies are questioning, like, now if there's like some level of transparency and our customers are going to find out where we're making our clothes, you know, we should put a lot more thought into it. And we do expect our companies to leverage their purchasing power to be able to sort of make those changes in governments or countries that don't have the infrastructure to support, like making sure workers' rights are being represented or our environment is being respected. So what we need to do from our end is to make sure that we reframe our minds from newest, fastest, and cheapest, because our retailers will give us what we want. So if we're asking for that and we're demanding that, then, you know, they're going to push onto their manufacturers to lower prices and less sustainable practices.
That's a really good point. I think that really kind of engages what our customer responsibility is, or what our customer opportunity would be in terms of how we engage with retailers. You know, I think that, you know, the pricing does, you know, it drives, you know, the need for, you know, the labor, you know, trying to get better prices, right? Trying to get better labor costs. But there's responsible ways to do that, and there's irresponsible ways to do that. And we see here that those consequences can be dire whenever, you know, things are not being observed the way that they should.
Yeah, 1,100 people passed away in that event, and you definitely see the ripple of our choices and our demands go back up the supply chain.
So on the supply chain, can you tell us a little bit about what happens along the line?
Sure. This is a very simplified apparel supply chain, and it talks about pretty much the main steps. A raw material, like your cotton fiber, gets spun into a yarn and woven into a fabric. Then you have the product development design, product development and production part of apparel, which is what we do here at the Incubator for our emerging designers. Then distribution, retail, and use. So in this circular model system, you know, we're kind of looking back and sort of purposefully trying to make sure that our designers are designing with the end user in mind, but also what's going to happen in the next step. How can they reuse the materials or reuse their garments? How can you alter it? How can you modify at the end of its life cycle to give it a new life cycle so that it doesn't just go into the garbage?
Yeah. Do you find that this is something that designers can do relatively easily, kind of in the emerging steps? And at what steps during the product development process do you think that they could engage this opportunity to think about where can we be more sustainable? What do we do?
It definitely starts in the concepting phase. From the very beginning, if you are thinking about what materials you're using. Is it bamboo, hemp, cotton, silk? Obviously, it has to be, appropriate for the function of the garment. If it's active wear, you'll definitely go, with a synthetic. But if you are thinking about, very purposefully each component, what it looks like in production, who's touching your materials, who's touching your garment all the way down the supply chain. How is it affecting the workers? What will happen at the end of it? How will your materials go back into the earth or be reused? And it definitely starts there. For our emerging designers, we're encouraging them we're going to provide a fabric library that has weighs in with a lot of sustainable fibers and materials, so that they can start or have more readily access to those materials when they're starting to develop. Additionally, we're also pushing onto, this is like the full product life cycle. Start with that versus just the inspiration. Look at all of the different phases. And we definitely leverage our use of technology here in the incubator. We have great resources and great tools for our designers. We have our unique PLM, or product lifecycle management system, and our 3D apparel system, so that they can start envisioning what their garments are going to look like without having to use the resources to see whether it's going to fit appropriately, if it's going to drape appropriately, and see, be able to make adjustments in a more sustainable way.
Absolutely. So Cory, how does circular economy kind of come into play here? Like, are there any myth-busting opportunities here? Because I think that we have our ideas about what it means for a designer to be sustainable, but I think there may be some things that we may not know.
Yeah, absolutely. So a few of the sort of stages that Michelle's touched on are really important places to think about, to really investigate what that end of life or end of use material is. So a lot of us assume that if something is a natural fiber or a leather or cotton, or that it will eventually biodegrade, but what happens in between that fabric weaving stage and production is the dyeing and finishing stage, that it puts a huge amount of chemicals, coatings onto our fabric that make them have the performance aspects that we enjoy, but make it so that they do not safely go back into the earth. So even with a natural fiber, we need to be asking questions from our manufacturers and as designers, as to what does the real end of life look like. And certainly when it comes to synthetic fibers, a great talk I heard recently by someone who's working on polyester recycling technology, which is very nascent, not at commercial scale yet, said he's a reformed clothing manufacturer when he realized once that he felt like he was putting a good product out into the world, but when he realized that every garment he made was still going to be there for his great-great-great-grandchildren's children to have to deal with, that it made him look at those garments in a different way. And everything that he put out in the world, he had to really consider, is this so beautiful and so precious that it should last for hundreds of years? And if not, I need to have a different plan for its end of life, if it's a sort of ephemeral of the moment product. So as I mentioned, one of the big myths is that recycling is, the boxes that we put our clothes in that say recycle at various take-back options. Less than 1% are being recycled into new fibers. There's a lot of great work being done in that technology development, but it is not at commercial scale yet, and there's very few companies that are really working with it. So those are mainly being sold overseas, and we're kind of flooding overseas markets.
Yeah, that's really interesting. We found this image here just kind of highlighting, kind of how a lot of this one I think is a bit more curated and organized, but it does kind of come in a variety of ways where you see them in street markets and various places where I think people are making attempts to reutilize the goods, but there are still quite many that are actually ending up in landfill still, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And there is a very efficient resale market. So I would say, something being sold overseas is far better than it going in landfill. However, if we're not tracing that down the downstream supply chain and seeing where it ends up and what happens to it at its end of life there, if we're selling it into markets where there is no infrastructure to collect, and it is ultimately ending up in the landfill, and in the meantime doing a lot of damage to local clothing economies. So it is certainly better than landfill, but it is not a perfect solution. It doesn't absolve us of our need to be more thoughtful in our consumption. So we need to be choosing what we purchase very carefully, and really making a commitment to treasure it, to own it, to value the work that has gone into it from those 100 people along the supply chain and the vision of the designer, and really treasure it and maintain it.
Yeah. One of the things that I've been seeing pop up more recently are things like ThreadUp and the Real Reel. Are these good solutions for us? And if we are looking for ways to reutilize garments, is this something that kind of helps with this scenario?
Yes, absolutely. I think that all of these are great avenues and channels for us to look into, especially when it comes to like fast fashion and purchasing things that might be more trend oriented, where you could resell it back after you've used it a few times. And then, purchase from there too, in this endless cycle of reuse.
Yeah, I'd say it's a big part of the solution. We have to be looking at sort of maintaining garments' use as long as possible, and then also looking at their end of life. But yeah, I treat thrift as my fast fashion. I know even if I convince all of you not to buy fast fashion ever again, there's still going to be plenty of it in the thrift stores. So if I have that desire to sort of try a new trend, I'm going to buy it from the thrift store and then donate it right back when I'm done, and make sure I'm not driving new production of more and more, because our production levels are just completely out of control. And then the money that I save shopping mostly thrift, I'm investing in really thoughtful designers who are doing things the right way and producing responsibly.
Well, that gives us a few options. I think that, the idea of shopping trend kind of in this space, but then kind of thinking in terms of Capsule. I want to go back a couple of slides. We had a poll about what it looks like to actually do capsule dressing. And so it's kind of creating this wardrobe that's kind of around your basics, but then you'd go to ThreadUp or the Real Reel, I guess, to get like your trend pieces. Is that kind of the idea that we would be looking for, or could you guys?
I think that's a great way to build your wardrobe. You have all of your staple pieces and you reuse them and mix and match. And, I think we're going to encourage our designers to sort of create assortments and collections this way, so that you can build collections based on multiple pieces that work together, and shop designers that or feel confident that have done their due diligence in their supply chains. And so the trendier pieces we can leave to Real Reel and ThreadUp.
That's definitely a solution. I think, for the average consumer, we want to know, how do we engage in this? If I want to support the idea of being sustainable, sometimes the idea of being sustainable may feel like a luxury. If am I going to really invest in a piece that's going to, kind of last me for a lifetime? Which thing do I buy? How do I buy it? But in this sense, it seems that this becomes a little bit more attainable in the way that ThreadUp allows you to shop similar to the way that you would shop anywhere else online. So you don't have to go dig through a lot of different things. It's all kind of there for you to see it online. It makes it a little easier. But then it doesn't put as much pressure on your investment pieces either. It gives you some opportunities to kind of change your mind, or, fix it, try a new idea. And social media is a little bit challenging too. I think now everyone's looking on Instagram like, oh, she wore that last time, and so there's a little bit of, consumer pressure, I think, to look new. So do you think that ThreadUp and the Real Reel kind of help us solve that issue, or do you think we just need to overhaul in the way that we think about how we consume our goods altogether? What would you guys say for consumer behavior?
I think there's a role for everyone to play in this. I think that sort of the responsibility gets batted back and forth, where brands will say, well, the consumers are demanding faster and cheaper, and consumers are saying, I don't want, I'm just being fed this kind of one model and I'm not given options. And I think there's a role for everyone to play in the kind of simultaneously changing that system. But I would definitely encourage folks to really look at the full range of resale. Everything from, my baseline is my local thrift and consignment shops. And it's just kind of digging around, experimenting with which one you like and what has the kind of selection that you like, and supporting your local economy in that way. And then when there's like a specific piece you're looking for, maybe you try the online options. ThreadUp is sort of mid-range for that sort of piece. And then there's higher end consignment like Real and Material World, which are making these more luxury type pieces more available and accessible. So it gives you a chance to kind of experience the quality that should be hopefully in the better kind of higher end luxury brands without paying that full price for them, and making sure they stay out of landfill. I think we do have to be mindful of, there's no way that we can create a sustainable system if we keep up with our current levels of consumption. So we can shift some of it to other avenues, but we also just have to be really realistic about the fact that we're consuming about 7 times more clothes than we once were, and we're paying a lot less for it. So that's just not, we can't keep going in that direction infinitely because the planet can't support it and the economy can't support it. So we have to kind of learn to make some choices about, prioritizing what's really important to us. And I think the designers can play a big role in, I love everything that is happening here at the Incubator around, getting designers to really think through that full product life cycle and think about, there's the longevity of a garment in terms of its physical durability, and then there's also this concept of emotional durability. That's a big topic of circular economy. Think about what makes people really attached to a garment, and some of that is around customization. I think trends around mass customization can actually play a role in circular economy as well. So what makes someone connect to a garment and want to keep wearing it as they change through different periods of their lives?
And I want to add to that, Cory, it's specifically into this emotional attachment or so. For me, if I was tailoring down my wardrobe, it would produce a lot less stress too. And I think Marie Kondo says, if it brings you joy, then maybe we're just shopping for pieces that feel that way initially as a consumer. Pieces that that were purposely designed, that that a low impact, that you'll be able to pick out of the closet and know that this is going to work or this is going to match, and that we've already thought this through. So then you have the luxury of, less impulsive way, and to build collections. And previously in a conversation, you mentioned also renting clothes too, right?
Yeah,
rent
I
the
think
runway.
that's also a really important piece of this puzzle, that if there's something you're going to wear once or for a special event, there's no need to own that garment and have it something. If you think of yourself as being responsible truly for the full life cycle of everything you purchase, then you might not want to take on that responsibility for something you're going to wear a few times. So there's rental for special occasions. There's rental for just renting a new few options every month to kind of change out a piece of your wardrobe, and I think that can play a big part.
That's a really good point. I feel like there's so many subscription models now for how you can actually, bring in new pieces into your wardrobe and then change your mind later, or you're going through a new life change. I actually used Le Tote Maternity when I had my little one last year, and it was such a helpful tool because I didn't want to invest in these pieces that I wasn't going to need or want, years. You just wanted it for the moment. So having the subscription model for those times, or even just, a new trend where you're what is it, this highlighter yellow or green, that it's beautiful, but I don't know if it's going to be here next year. And so I don't know that I want to completely invest in that color, but it would be nice to rent it or to subscribe to it for a minute and then move on to the next color. I love that color. It's one of my new favorites, but it's something that is, something to consider. So there's a lot of really great ways for us to engage in fashion, kind of in these new go-to-market strategies that some of these brands are trying. Rent the Runway, and I feel like I've actually seen Ann Taylor now adopt a new subscription model as well for your workwear. So they give you a lot of options.
Yeah, it's really, I think this is kind of the year when the model has really been proven by these leaders, and everyone is jumping on the bandwagon now. And I think we'll have to sort of wait to sort out who's doing it really well and who's just sort of jumping on the trend. But those who've been watching it for a while and waiting for the right moment to enter, I think are really seeing a big opportunity there.
Absolutely. So I do want to make a quick note. Thank you so much for our guest. We're going to just make a quick transition and talk. The City of Austin is one of our founding partners here at the Austin Community College Fashion Incubator. And I just wanted to highlight some of the things that they're also doing in the realm of sustainability. The Austin Resource Recovery Circular Economy Program from the City of Austin is doing reverse pitch, finalist pitch on April 30th from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Capitol Factory. So this is a reverse pitch competition where they basically provide resources and materials that need to be utilized, and then they solicit designers and makers from the community to tell them what they can do with with these resources. So this is something that we want to support and to let you know is going on. So April 30th from 6 to 8 p.m. at Capitol Factory. You can find more information at reversepitch.org. If there are any sewers in the room, we have volunteer opportunities through Fix-It clinics, and more information is on austintexas.gov/Fix-It-Clinic. Gathering information about business textiles, we're actually trying to figure out how to create a zero waste economy when it comes to the utilization of textiles in the city. And so the city's really taking this on through this particular department to figure out how companies are planning to utilize their textiles at the end of their production cycle or at the end of their sampling. And so you can always go online to see what they're doing through that. There's a survey that they have open that's on SurveyMonkey. We'll have all of these links available on our site, so you'll be able to check back whenever we post our episodes, and you'll get a chance to participate in some of these activities. But if there's any additional questions about what they're doing, Circular Economy at austintexas.gov is where you can find them or ask questions about what the City of Austin is doing regarding zero waste and sustainability. So I do want to open it up now for about 10 minutes, just for Q&A from the audience. I think Cory and Michelle both gave us some really interesting things to think about regarding sustainability, but we'd love to know what you think or questions you may have for them. So we're opening it up now for a few questions.
Hi, thank you. My name is Scott. I'm a teacher at ACC. The City of Austin uses sales tax revenue to fund essential services such as the fire department, the police department, EMS, parks and libraries. It's very substantial, included the taxes that they get from property. So regarding buying online, if that company does not have a presence in Texas, they do not normally, or they do not collect sales tax revenue. How are you trying to address that issue, if you are at all?
Yeah, I would say shopping local should always be your first choice. That's part of shopping sustainably. It's in addition to supporting your local economy, transportation is a big part of the carbon footprint of our clothes. So the more that we can keep things circulating within our local economy, the better. And so I think online resellers have played a really important role in sort of bringing people into resale who might not have tried it otherwise, but I'm hoping that can be a transition where their next step is to sort of try their local shops and see what's already available in their community. I would say also on the sort of manufacturing side, I also work with an amazing local organization just across the street called Austin Creative Reuse that collects fabric that is not in use from other places, among other materials, and organizes sorts and measures and resells it. So it's almost like the experience of going to your Joann Fabric or something like that in terms of the level of organization that's all done by a group of volunteers. And so you can go and shop for fabric if you're working in production and know that it's came from something that could have gone to waste in your local community, and it's supporting a local nonprofit.
Thank you so much. So I don't have a good sense of fashion, but one of the things that I love is like jeans for working in the yard or whatever else. Things tear. So I'm curious about disassembly and like buying a pant leg or a pocket or whatnot, just so that I don't have to throw that pair of jeans out.
Yeah, I think one of a way to address that would be through patchwork mostly. We have so many different available options for denim now, in terms of purchasing one or getting, maybe a pair that doesn't fit or something from your neighbor or so to be able to patch. And I think just your local alterations company could probably support you with that.
There's also, it's something that's done in those fix-it clinics. So there's people who are experienced in that sort of thing and will kind of not do it for you, but kind of walk you through if you want to learn something about mending yourself. Miranda Bennett Studios, who's also a local designer and produces locally, is starting a once-a-month Mending Mondays at her shop on East 11th. So that's another one to check out if you're kind of interested. And there are some great local denim. I mean, denim can be really challenging around the seams. But there's a couple of folks producing denim locally in very tiny little shops that I'll try to get links to you guys so we can share them on the site also. So those might be good resources.
But certainly commend you on wanting to fix your goods.
Same thing related to his, like with workout stuff, like tours and stitches. How would you relate to that?
Could you repeat the question?
Same thing related to his with like the pant leg, but with like workout stuff. How would you?
I think we'd probably recommend the same resources to help you mend your clothes.
Same thing goes for like tours and holes and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, and those are really challenging materials to work with also, and tend to be fabric blends, which make them hard to recycle. So we do want to keep them circulating as long as possible. But
One of the things that I would also add is that for the continuing education department here in community programs, we have an incredible group of classes that would help you to learn how to do some of these activities on your own, and they're in short run format. So you get a chance to learn how to use the machine, how to what kinds of fibers and textiles work well together. So you may come up with something that's even more interesting than just adding another patch of denim or another piece there. But you'll know how that fabric interacts with your garment already. But we have really great classes that are available. If you go onto the Fashion Incubator website, we link all of the fashion courses that are available through community programs, the new associate degree, and in fashion marketing. And so there's a lot of different classes that we offer to be able to help support our local community to be able to keep using their garments that they love over and over again.
I checked out your Facebook page for the Wearables program that you work with, and I noticed that it's based in New York. Do they plan on expanding to any other cities, or what's your suggestion in starting something like that in Austin?
for wearable collections,
For the
yeah,
recyclable
so they
program.
actually are considering expansion to Austin. Their model is in-building collection, which hasn't been relevant here until very recently. We haven't had apartment buildings in the same way that New York does. There is actually a company that operates, it's based in Ohio, but operates locally called Simply Recycling, which is a similar model, but they actually do curbside pickup. I'm not sure if that's continuing. It's a program with the city of Austin, and I'm not sure if it's extending into next year. They were in a sort of pilot phase, but Simply Recycling does a pretty similar model. And then I would say your local thrift stores are always your best bet. And it's another one of those myths that, like, if you have workout clothes that just really can't be mended and they're not wearable, donating them to a collection agency like that, or a thrift store even, they will get kind of funneled downstream into downcycling options. Well, they'll very likely be made into sort of upholstery, stuffing, or that type of material. So it's not an ideal end of life, but it's certainly a better option.
This is on? Anyways, as you know, America is 5% of the global population, but we consume 24% of consumables. And I still think sustainability takes time and money. So in what way is the fashion industry trying to get the message out to everybody and make it attainable for everybody, no matter what walk of life or what socioeconomic situation you sit in?
I mean, you're 100% right, and I think there's a couple of responses that I would give to that. One is, I think there's a myth that sustainability has to be more expensive, and in some ways this is a myth that's sort of been perpetuated by brands. There are some great examples of brands creating, like, cradle to cradle certified T-shirts for £7. There's a company in Europe that's doing that now. And so I think it's up to us as consumers to demand that if you can do this, this should not be a kind of one-off side project that's your sustainability story. This should be your normal model of production. But the other thing that makes sustainability or more sustainable brands more expensive is that they're often very small startup brands, and they just don't have the economies of scale to sort of control their supply chain in the way that the larger companies do. So for me, it's a long-term solution, but making sure to support those companies that are really making those more challenging choices and helping them grow so that they can help bring the price down for everyone, really help. But I always, want to come back to the fact that not buying something is the most sustainable thing you can do. So we're not going to, purchase our way to a more sustainable world. So, I don't ever want sustainability to seem like this aspirational thing that, only people at a certain income level can afford, when the most sustainable thing we can do is to not purchase something that we're not going to love forever.
At the end of the day, it'll be whatever we're demanding from our retailers that they'll provide us. So if we're purchasing purposefully, then they'll start looking or purchasing from their manufacturers or creating things that are more sustainable.
Great. Well, I really want to thank both you and you, Cory and Michelle, for joining us. We really appreciate your expertise and what you shared with us regarding sustainability. I think that there's definitely some, places where we can kind of jump on board, and to be able to kind of start the journey towards sustainability. I feel like it's definitely a spectrum of participation, and so just doing one small thing can make a difference. But to your point, it is it's a long-term change that's happening throughout the way that we kind of consume our materials. So I just want to say thank you so much. Can we give them a round of applause? So I want to just mention quickly, there's a few upcoming events that we want to make sure you're aware of. On April 30th at 10 a.m. here will be the grand opening for the Fashion Incubator. So we want to make sure that all of you know that you're invited. It is open to the public. We'll have the mayor here. It's going to be a really exciting time. We'd love to have you. You can RSVP just to make sure we have enough chairs and snacks on austincc.edu/grand opening. It's a free RSVP. We'd love to see you. The next event is for National Small Business Week on May 9th. We're going to be here talking about business. ACC Talks Fashion Business is the name of that talk. And we are going to be hearing from a direct-to-consumer brand, a brand that's sold to big box stores like Neiman Marcus and Nordstrom, and also local manufacturers. So we'll be here talking with them about how does fashion business really work. Additionally, we have another fashion hour coming up on May 17th, so it's a little sooner than our normal because of Memorial Day weekend. So May 17th, we'll be back here for our next fashion hour, and that's going to be with Luann Stovall and Michelle Washington. So they'll be talking about color theory, psychology, and marketing. And then last but not least, at what time? So same bat time, same bat channel. We are at 12 noon, 12 to 1. Here at the Fashion Incubator Design Lab for Fashion Hour. So the last event that I want to, and certainly not the least, is Made in Mexico. It's a screening, a film screening that's been done by Remake, the nonprofit that we highlighted earlier. And they're really talking about what's happening in terms of the creation and production of garments and the women who are involved with that. So it's going to be a really meaningful film screening that I think you'd really enjoy. It's going to be followed up with a panel discussion, so very indie film documentary feel. That's going to be June 6th. You can get the details on Sustainable Fashion ATX. So if you Google that, they should be able to find it, right, Cory? Yeah. Okay, great. So that's it for our upcoming events. Again, where to follow us today, we are on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook at the same handle at ACC Fashion Incubator. If you tag us today, we will add you to our Instagram story. We'd love to highlight what you saw today. And then lastly, if you've missed the first 2 episodes of Fashion Hour, they're available on Channel 19 on ACC TV on Spectrum. And we are going to be posting this on Spectrum as well. This is episode 103 for Fashion Hour on sustainability. So thank you so much for coming, and we'll see you guys next time.